Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rich, Simple Human. I'm Lindsey Francis, legacy and wealth psychologist, and today I'm talking about the importance of routine. Today is a solo episode, and I'm coming to you this week with some questions I have been asked multiple times. So this week, the theme seems to have been routine. Why do I need it? Why do I want it? And why should I listen to you, Lindsey Francis, keep going on about it? Well, I'm about to tell you why it's so important for your performance, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. And also, wait for it, spiritually and financially. We know from the School of Neuroeconomic Decision-Making that people with a good routine, a very soundly operating nervous system, and a sense of calm and stability will make better decisions economically than those that don't. So if you're leading a business, if you're running a business, if you're investing money, or you like to make some money, listen in, because this is really, really crucial. I've also had a lovely week with men. Let me tell you why. My organisation, my business and my work has always had more male clients than female. And I put this down to the fact that I use biometric data tracking. I use Whoop and Aura data, sometimes Garmin, to track what's going on in my clients' nervous systems to see what they're doing. And guess what? Men like data. Why is that? Well, men seem to like numbers more. And of course, we can start debating why that is. But it does appeal to men when we can see a graph about how their nervous system is performing or their body is performing, and we can relate it to their mental and emotional state. So this seems to be particularly attractive to people who are men. Women, of course, like this data as well. But I think that's why my own work has been so man-heavy. And this week is no exception. This week, I've had the privilege of speaking to not only male clients, but also a cohort of over 10 men in workshop settings. And that really is a joy, because we get to dig into the theory around the conscious and subconscious, around the nervous system and the way that our human operating system works. We get to talk about Freud's iceberg, the Yerkes-Dodson performance curve, and emotional granularity. Now, isn't that interesting? Can you tell the difference between wonder and curiosity, for example, as an emotion? And I always come back to those two because they are two of my favourite. In fact, studies show that people that are able to live in a space of wonder or access the emotion of wonder live more joyful and longer lives. So go outside and see if you can be in awe and wonder about something. In fact, awe is a different emotion from wonder. Awe is a much bigger, existential type of awe. I can't even begin to explain it, but if you don't know what I mean, please go and practice being in awe. It's a bit like seeing a newborn baby, or being in total awe of how enormous the mountains might be, or in awe of how incredible a higher power could be in your life. Please go and find some awe. That is super important. But what I'm going to do in today's session is I'm actually going to share with you some of the questions that have been asked to me this week about why a routine is so important. And if any of you know my framework, you'll know that I base my work on the pillars of well-being: eating, sleeping, breathing, moving, praying and meditating. That's the recovery part. And if we don't do all of those every day, unfortunately, we're building on sand. Wouldn't you like to build your life on a firm foundation? Well, if you do, you need to keep an eye on those pillars of well-being. You also need to remember the 6 pillars of energy. And I'm going to share with you again what those are. They are physical energy, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, and financial energy. They're all energies that contribute to a balanced and fulfilling life with meaning and purpose. And if we miss one, unfortunately, we might not be very happy. In fact, I shared a lovely survey with some clients this week where they scored themselves on those 6 pillars. It was super interesting to see how people were scoring well in some areas and not in others. And there is no set way of doing this work. It is very, very bespoke. You will always end up with some people that will say, I feel really strong in the relational area of energy at the moment, but I don't feel so strong in my financial, or I feel really strong in my spiritual, but not in my physical. But this is where the diagnostic and self-awareness work gets so interesting, because when we become aware of ourselves, we can understand ourselves more and we can choose to live more optimally. What a wonderful way to be. we can also be much more conscious of our desires and make better decisions. And that's specifically important when it comes to financial decision making, whether you're spending, saving, investing, or borrowing, depending on what your lifestyle or your work looks like. So, are you comfortable with the way you spend, save, borrow, invest, and give, or not? That's another question. But today we're going to talk about why routine is so important. The first question I'm going to share with you that I've been asked is, why does my nervous system seem calmer when I follow a consistent morning routine? Well, this is obviously from a person who understands what their nervous system is doing and they can feel it. Your nervous system or your nerves are your nerves. It's your emotion. It's that reactive nervousness, the anxiety. Why does it seem calmer when I'm following a consistent morning routine? Well, I talk often about the billionaire morning routine, which is the imaginary scenario where you wake up with no pressure and you do breathing, meditation, you have a wonderful nutrient-rich breakfast, and you go on to do all of the things that you would be doing to build a really healthy lifestyle. Do we think that billionaires actually do that? I can tell you they don't, but the billionaire morning routine is a really fun one to think about getting those pillars of well-being aligned in the morning, understanding your will and purpose in terms of your higher power connection and fueling your body optimally, physically, mentally and emotionally. So why does your body feel better when you follow a morning routine with consistency? Well, it's all about predictability. Your body loves predictability, and that's because it saves energy. When your mind and body can predict what's going to happen, it doesn't have to use as much energy wondering what might happen next. So, for example, if you were to have the same breakfast, lunch and dinner every day, your body's predicting what's going to happen and it's being reassured. So it's using less energy thinking about it. This is why meal planning is so important. I'm not suggesting you have the same thing for breakfast, lunch and dinner, but I am suggesting you build a morning routine that works for you. Doing the same thing in the same way every day will help. So what could you do differently this week that gives you some consistency? Could you do some journaling, some prayer or some meditation first thing at the same time? Could you have your breakfast prepared the night before so it's predictable in the morning? Could you lay out your clothes the night before? Could you be very structured about your morning routine and actually benefit from the fact that your nervous system will be calmer, your brain waves will be more organised, you'll be mentally sharper and physically quicker? That sounds like a really easy biohack to me. Question 2. How does routine improve performance without making life feel rigid or boring? Oh, I had a really interesting one this week. In fact, 2 people said to me they really, really enjoy the thrill of not having to follow too much of a routine. I said, that's great, but are you able to really optimize yourself with self-control and routine within a boundary? Or is that actually chaos? And spontaneity and chaos are very close together, of course. And boundaries and boringness can also be very close together in some people's minds. So, how can your routine improve performance without life seeming boring? Well, you've got 24 hours in every day. So I'm not saying that you're meticulously planning every one of those 24 hours. I'm actually suggesting you only plan really one of them in great detail. And then obviously your work, perhaps, or your activities around that. But there are 24 hours. You don't need to be organising every single one. But a morning routine will really help you build more consistency and more predictability and optimise your performance and behaviour. Question 3. Oh, this came from one of my Ironman friends. Why do elite performers rely on routines before high-pressure situations? We're talking here about that routine that you might see sports people performing before they go. Perhaps, I'm thinking about downhill skiing. They tuck a pole in a certain way, or they perform a specific routine, or you might hear people say they always eat the same thing before a race. That's not just in case you get sick. It's to prime your body and save energy. If you're not thinking about it, you're not wasting energy. So, for example, we learn to walk at an early age, and then we don't every day think, I must be thinking about how I walk. We just do it automatically. So this is why elite performers rely on routine, because it actually saves energy and allows them to use more energy for the performance. Does that make sense? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could do that in your own life? The next question. This is somebody who was a little bit sceptical about what I was saying. Can simple daily rituals really reduce stress and mental fatigue? Daily rituals. I really like a daily ritual. I really like my coffee the same way in the morning. I actually like a specific mug. I like a particular breathing exercise. I also like some particular exercise routines. I think simple daily rituals are wonderful, and I'm not talking about waving sage or doing anything odd. I do think that prayer is very important if you are connecting to a higher power, of course, and if you don't know what that means, go away and try it. In fact, AI is your friend here. You could ask it all sorts of questions about world religions and spiritual connection, but a simple daily ritual will really reduce stress and mental fatigue, again, because it's predictable and it's calming. Watching the same film on repeat, perhaps rereading a book, perhaps listening to the same piece of music. Of course, now with technology, we don't do what we used to do. I had a tape player in my first car, and I probably only had 5 tapes. So I listened to the same ones again and again and again. My nervous system loved it. Routine, predictability, same rhythm, same song. It was great. Can't remember what it was, probably Kylie. But before you turn off, I don't listen to Kylie Minogue anymore, I promise. Next question. Why do I feel more emotionally stable when my sleep, meals and movement happen at regular times? This is somebody that's admitted that it makes them feel better. Because, again, it goes back to our primitive desire to have predictability. When we lived in tribes and we were governed by the sun, we had to live in the routines of nature. We had to live with the rhythms of the day. We had to be much more in our daily routine because we were going along to work with the sunshine, with the heat, with the seasons, perhaps if we were farming. We were very grounded in the way that the world worked. And unfortunately, that's no longer the same. You could order food at any time of day or night. You can go on the internet. You've got electric light. But I do suggest that you eat at the similar time every day and perhaps in a similar way, if that is optimal for your health, of course. So just thinking about maybe breakfast at 7, lunch at 1, dinner at 7, perhaps with a snack if you need it in the afternoon. But really optimizing the way that you eat and behave will make an enormous difference to your emotional stability. Some of you will know the HALT acronym: hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. These are triggers. If you're not hungry, you're not angry, you're not lonely, and you're not tired, you're probably feeling okay. But they do follow a particular order. If you're hungry, you may get angry. If you're angry, you may feel lonely. If you're lonely, you may feel tired, or the other way around. Please, please, please remember, this is age-old theory. Building a routine like a child will help you. In fact, if you have got children, you should have a really good routine anyway. But that's another conversation about parenting for another time. Another question I have for you. What happens in the brain and the body when routines become habits? Well, again, we need even less energy to know that we're doing them. When a routine becomes a habit, it's automatic. It is not in the conscious, it is in the subconscious. This is really, really important because we embed it in the subconscious, we just do it by default. This is great for healthy habits, but it's not great for unhealthy habits like addictions. Smoking, drinking, pornography, etc. You do not want to be doing things subconsciously. You want to be conscious with your life. You want to be choosing. You want to be choosing things that make you feel great and improve your pillars of energy: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, and financial. So please, please, please think about routine, and think about more routine when periods of uncertainty or change are happening, because it will help you feel more stable. It will help you structure your day. And chaos is not comforting. You might think it's exciting, but as I said, there's 24 hours in every day. So how much structure could you bring? And then give yourself some time to freestyle. That's absolutely fine. When I say freestyle, don't just scroll on your phone, but go off and do something spontaneous. Enjoy yourself in your scheduled spontaneous time. And my final question. This one is really, really interesting. How can sophrology help me create routines that support energy and focus instead of pressure and perfectionism? Well, there's always the conversation about perfectionism and OCD, isn't there? But sophrology is an evidence-based, science-backed, data-driven method that allows you to use visualization, meditation, breathing, and I also add journaling and scheduling with biometric data into creating a lifestyle daily that works for you, making sure you've done some daily sophrology practice, making sure that you've noticed what's going on, and making sure that you're doing what sophrology says, creating harmony in consciousness, or consciousness in harmony. That is the idea. So get yourself a practice, get yourself a program, make sure you do it every day, and enjoy the fact that you are a rich, simple human, but that structure and routine really does optimize performance in all of those ways. So why not start now? I could also start talking about the routine of a Sabbath. So there are 7 days in a week, and having one of those days as a rest day is also really important. What does that look like for you? Do you really take a rest day, or are you always on? Is your rest day not really a rest day and you're still pounding out a 20k run or doing things that don't feel terribly restful and relaxing? I know it's easier said than done in modern times, but please think about how you might structure a daily routine and a Sabbath in the week, and also seasons of rest. Do we really want to be really pushing in the middle of winter when it's dark? Or should we save the pushing that we need to do and the striving for spring or summertime? Let me know. I'd love to hear your comments on your own routines. But until next time, please make sure that you subscribe to the newsletter. This one will be particularly interesting because it will talk about how you build a routine. Go to the website, lindseyfrancis.co.uk or richsimplehuman.com, and make sure that you are signed up, that you are ready to receive, and that you'll be hearing from me about all things that make your life richer, simpler, and more human. Until next time, take care.